So over the past several hours, I've seen a lot of mudslinging and slander being thrown around, which unfortunately has become all too common when a new Zack Snyder film is released. Once again, what we have are people on social media and so-called critics going out of their way once again to make things personal because of their unnatural hate boner for Zack Snyder. For some reason, these people seem to be incapable of critiquing the film itself, and instead resort to spiteful comments about Zack Snyder and his fan base. And I say once again, that is not film criticism. The truth is that there is plenty to criticize about the film itself without resorting to petty online bullshit. Let's discuss.
I watch so you don't have to.
Before I get started, I'd like to kindly ask that you hit the like button, and please subscribe to the channel for more content just like this.
Come on. Do it. Do it!
Ladies and gentlemen, make no mistake about it, this is not a video that I wanted to make, but I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't make it. And I'd be no different than the imbeciles you see masquerading as critics all over the internet right now. We all know that there is some kind of weird personal bias against Zack Snyder for whatever reason. But when it comes to Rebel Moon as a film, and when it comes to its entire release strategy, it leaves a lot to be desired. I'm going to be very clear when I say this because I'm honest, and I don't make excuses for anyone. I'm simply judging things based on what I see from my perspective, and that's all I can really do. Zack Snyder left the typical Hollywood system to go make movies for Netflix, a place where presumably he would have more creative freedom and there would be less studio meddling.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
One of the biggest issues that people had with BVS, if you remember, was that the film felt incomplete initially, because the studio essentially made Zack cut the film down against his will. And regardless of how you feel about his DC movies, there is no denying that the extended cut of BVS is much better than the theatrical cut, because it fills in some of those narrative gaps that some people took issue with. Which brings me to Rebel Moon, an idea that was originally pitched to Disney as a possible Star Wars film. So Zack was denied, and he took the project to Netflix, where he kind of reworked it into something a bit more original. Only the story doesn't stop there, because based on Zack's appearance on the Joe Rogan podcast, he basically confirms that it was Netflix's call to release PG-13 versions of Rebel Moon first.
Why?
And in a lot of ways, it feels like history is once again repeating itself, and this time, it's a lot more frustrating. Even if Zack has a guarantee from Netflix that he can release his full version of these movies at some point, the bottom line is, his vision was once again compromised. And I have to hold him accountable just as much as I do Netflix. Because Zack Snyder appears to be complacent with Netflix's release strategy. Now, I get that they call the shots. They supply the money, they supply the distribution. But I don't think they're taking into account the damage that's being done to the potential brand of Rebel Moon by releasing these versions of the movies first. And make no mistake about it, based on what I'm seeing so far, these films do feel incomplete.
What the hell am I looking at? When does this happen in the movie?
This is a dangerous game that they are playing, because we could find ourselves in a position where audiences are no longer interested in seeing extended cuts of Rebel Moon. And to me, if that happens, this will go down as yet another massive misstep in the world of entertainment when it comes to an artist's vision being compromised. And yes, both Zack Snyder and Netflix will be to blame in that situation. So you might ask yourselves, why do I say that these films feel incomplete? Well, if you look at Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scargiver, it doesn't take long for you to notice issues popping up everywhere from a storytelling perspective. There's a scene early in this film where the villagers give the heroes these handmade heartfelt gifts that are supposed to represent each of them in some way as individuals. And it feels like as you're watching it, that this scene is supposed to mean more. It feels like something is missing from the story that would make this scene resonate more.
That makes sense.
And when it comes right down to it, the answer is very simple. This scene does not feel earned, it feels rushed. Because we haven't spent anywhere near enough time with these characters, and they haven't spent anywhere near enough time with each other on screen to make something like this feel organic. It also makes it very difficult to care about these characters when they are placed in dangerous situations or when they die like we are supposed to. It's like large chunks of their story has been removed, which is pretty much what happened by Zack's own admission. There's another scene where they do this round table-esque discussion where all the characters reveal things about their past to the rest of the group. The result is a series of flashbacks that I guess are supposed to be the only character development that they're ever going to receive.
No, don't like that.
The problem is that the way it's presented to us in the film feels like a lazy exposition dump. They aren't putting in the legwork to build these characters properly, mostly because they don't have the screen time to do it. This is on Netflix, where we should have no restrictions when it comes to run times. Not to mention, it probably would have been very easy and frankly beneficial to the story if they just turned this into a series instead. That way you would have the proper amount of time to establish everything. But no, instead they gave it less time by cutting everything back, and it makes no sense creatively. This movie basically consists of 1 hour long or so introduction, and the second half is basically a long ass battle sequence. And once again, sprinkled throughout it, just like part 1, are some of the most familiar plot points and generic themes possible. Training the villagers to fight the more sophisticated army. Yeah, we've seen that before. A weird, awkward relationship between the quiet, stoic member of the group and a random kid. All with the purpose of showing that this character, who is emotionless, does in fact have emotions. We've seen that before.
Why do you cry?
And those are just a couple of things that felt very cliche to me about this movie. And again, Zack Snyder has never really been the type of director to give me cliche entertainment. He always took more chances creatively. That's one of the reasons that people don't like him. It also happens to be one of the reasons why I typically do like him. This doesn't feel like Zack Snyder to me because I've already seen him do much better. I also can't for the love of God comprehend why this whole movie takes place on one planet. I understand for story purposes this is where the conflict is located. But this is something that we've criticized Disney Star Wars for when they constantly use Tatooine or some desert planet variation when we have a universe of planets and interesting places that they could be taking advantage of. Granted, Rebel Moon is only 2 movies in, and I get it's not the same situation, but Rebel Moon is supposed to be the alternative. And it's making some similar mistakes. It just feels so conservative. I was expecting an adventure that takes us to different places we've never seen before, and 75% of this film takes place in a wheat field.
I don't get it.
Listen, I know this probably sounds a little bit doom and gloom and like I hated everything about this film. Honestly, I like Scargiver slightly better than the first movie, but that really isn't saying much. And as always, Zack Snyder's visuals are on point. You could take almost any frame from this movie and put it in an art book for people to admire. There's no denying that he knows his way around a camera, and anyone who says otherwise isn't paying attention. Zack Snyder is a more than capable director, which is why this movie is so frustrating to me. I just don't see the same passion in this movie that I've seen in some of his past movies. And I think it has a lot to do with him trying to do too much and having too much on his plate. And of course, willingly participating in his movie being chopped all to hell didn't help either.
Big mistake.
I probably sound like a broken record when I say this, but to me, Zack Snyder shines as a director when he's adapting something, or when he's remaking something, or when he's reimagining something in his image. And Rebel Moon just doesn't give me the same inspired vibe that a lot of his other works have in the past. And frankly, if I'm being even more brutally honest, Zack Snyder needs to get back to the theater. Watching a movie like this from home on streaming does not help the viewing experience, at least not for me. Listen, I'm a fan of Zack's work overall, and I'm only saying this because I care. But right now, it feels like more than anything, he needs constructive criticism.
Help me help you.
Now I know, given his odd status of being one of the most hated men in Hollywood for reasons I will never understand, he rarely receives constructive criticism. It's a lot of, ooh, he's too dark and edgy, or ooh, he uses too much slow motion, or ooh, his fan base is too toxic, or ooh, his movies don't make me laugh. MCU brain rot and Snyder derangement syndrome have taken its toll on people, to the point that they are incapable of relaying valid criticisms about his films and pretty much just resort to the same tired-ass talking points that you see all over the internet. But I'm here criticizing this film rightfully because I see this as a situation that's been mishandled. Rebel Moon Part 2 left me feeling very uninspired and most times disinterested. That's why I'm going to give Rebel Moon Part 2 the Careless Sam Gerard.
I don't care! Y'all be cool. Nah.